Am I ready? Okay. Thank you, Dwayne. We're grateful. We appreciate all your efforts. Well, good morning. Welcome to Calvary Lutheran Church. We are so glad all of you are here. We just wanted to begin with just a quick word of prayer, and then there's several other people who will be kind of leading today. But let's just take a quick word of prayer. Please join me. Let us pray. Good and gracious God, we give thanks for this day, a beautiful day to gather together, to share in fellowship and in the abundance of this earth. We give thanks for this meal, for the hands that prepared it, for its nourishment for our bodies, and for the opportunity to gather together, to discern and hear and partner with the city to think about what is your dream for this particular faith community, but also for the Federal Way greater community. And we are grateful to dream and to think, to discern, to ask questions, and to hear about visions and dreams and plans that are happening now and in the weeks to come, the months and the years to come. We pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen. Kathleen, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you.
I forgot. I did forget one announcement, and this is just Sunday morning related, so I apologize. I forgot to announce the service for Ray Holmes. It will be at Gethsemane Cemetery on Pacific Highway tomorrow at 2 p.m. So I had meant to announce that, and just so you know, tomorrow at 2 p.m. Service for Ray Holmes, graveside at Gethsemane, that Catholic cemetery on Pacific Highway as you kind of get down the hill. So now, Kathleen, thanks. Sorry, Kathleen.
My name is Kathleen. This year I'm serving the congregation as the president. And I want to welcome all of you and thank you, and especially Pastor Colleen Chinnan from the Presbyterian, the Steel Lake congregation who meets here, shares the building with us. There is so much going on. Laura and I go in the office, we're looking for another phone call, and the saved phone call says, listen, we see you got some land. We see it's in a good spot. Could we talk to you? We have so many possibilities of where this congregation could go. And for just a second, I'd like us to look back at where we were 70 years ago. Dwayne?
I just got home from the office, and Bill says, I found a piece of property over on 320th. And he says, let's go look at it. And I said, okay, come on over to the house, I'll go with you. So he came over, we got in my car, we went over there, and I looked at the property, and boy, it looked like a winner to me. Mm-hmm. So we went in, and I introduced myself, and I said, I'm Dr. Corliss, and this is Pastor Bill Youngdahl from Calvary Lutheran Church, and we're kind of interested in a piece of property you got for sale. And I said, well, we want to buy 5 acres of that 10 acres you've got for sale down the street on 320th on the other side. And he says, can't sell you 5 acres, but you can have the whole 10.
What a deal.
Yeah. I says, how much money you want for it? And I'm not sure, but I think he said either $12,000 or $15,000.
That's a hefty sum when you're starting with zero.
That sounds like a good deal to me. I says, I think we'd like to buy it, but we don't have any money with us. And Mr. Fleming said to me, he says, well, I know your grandfather. If you'll sign the papers to buy it, he says, I know you'll pay me. It's no problem. And then we thanked him. I shook his hands and we left. And we got in a car and we're going down the road. And Bill says to me, go over that with me. He says, I'd like to know what happened.
So you see that small building over there or out there beneath the mountain? So that's us 70 years ago. And John Corliss, that you just heard describing, coming out here to look at a piece of property that the Fleming Real Estate Company was offering, and he and Pastor Youngdahl buying it on a handshake. I looked it up, and they were guaranteeing between $140,000 and $170,000 for this. And when I called John up and said, how did you know you could do that? He said to me, sometimes you just know. It's our discerning. It's not that we have a mission, it's God has a mission, and God uses us in this church to reach that mission, reach that vision. So what we're trying to do here in discernment is get on to God's eyesight. What does God imagine, see, feel, hope for us, for our congregation, for our community, for this place? And we're so thrilled that we have an opportunity to partnership with a lot of other folks. And at this point, I'm going to introduce the secretary of our council, Sue Thorson.
Good morning. I'm here to introduce Cheney Skadston. She is a senior planner for the City of Federal Way. She's been there about 4 years now. And with further ado, Cheney.
Thank you. Hi, good morning. I'm Cheney Skadston, and thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to come and speak and share with you about the work the city has been doing over the last 3+ years. A show of hands, who here has heard of the comprehensive plan? Oh, nice. Okay, pretty good. Okay, so the city is required by the state to update its comprehensive plan on a periodic basis. Now it's every 10 years. And what we do through this process is we're updating the city's manual, basically. The comprehensive plan includes, I think, 16 chapters now that cover everything that runs a city. It includes transportation, housing, capital facilities, utilities, community services. And we've added some new focus this year, this periodic update cycle, to be more responsive to current needs and looking into the future. So there's new planning and thinking about climate change and resiliency, arts, culture, and historic preservation, and how to better serve our community. So this is something that we do every 20 years, and it's going to be adopted. Our timeline for adoption of this manual, this update to the manual, is December of 2024. So this year, we're just less than 6 months away. And what we're planning for is the next 20 years. It's a 20-year planning horizon. So you might see some of the City of Federal Way comprehensive plan documents or promotional materials say 2044. It's because that's our planning horizon. We're thinking about the next 20 years. And the comprehensive plan includes an inventory of existing conditions, what's out there now. It reviews the past, looking into the history, and then is planning for the future. We begin by setting a vision statement. So overall, we set a vision statement for the whole city, and that's here. That's written here, and I'll leave these posters for you to look at, but I'll read it aloud. So the 2024 vision statement for Federal Way is that Federal Way leads South King County as a livable, vibrant, and well-connected community. A reimagined city center and a defined downtown are the heart of the city and a source of pride. The natural environment thrives, businesses prosper, abundant housing options meet diverse needs. The community is socially engaged and feels a sense of belonging, and getting around is convenient and safe. The community embraces its commitment to unlocking the untapped potential. So there are three, pillars to under this vision statement, and that's livability, vibrancy, and connection, being well connected. We use this vision statement to help set the targets, to help think about the future for all these chapters, all these subject-specific planning, so for our transportation and our housing. And another big piece of thinking about the future is the actual planning in terms of how many jobs and how many people do we think will be living here over the next 20 years, and making sure that our infrastructure is going to be able to accommodate adequately that new need. Okay, maybe you've heard this before, but we're planning over the next 20 years for about 11,000 new housing units. Right now, there's about 37,000 housing units in the city, so it's a little less than a third growth, and then about 20,000 jobs. So what part of this process is taking those numbers and figuring out where they go, what they'll look like, and who they'll serve. So understanding or planning for who they'll serve is understanding what the current needs are. So I think the housing piece is really important as we look around and think about the changing conditions around us. We have the light rail station opening, hopefully, in 2026, if there aren't any other delays. But around our light rail station in downtown, just across the street, there's not a lot of speculative redevelopment. There's been a couple new apartment complexes built in the last couple years, but there's also a lot of vacant and redevelopable parcels that are ready to help support that new investment in light rail infrastructure. Something really important with our land use portion of the comprehensive plan is making sure that we're putting compatible uses next to each other. For example, we wouldn't want to have a lot of low-density single-family homes next to the light rail station because you wouldn't be able to maximize or optimize that investment. And then also with placing maybe more residents and more businesses near the light rail station with the goal to reduce people driving and parking at a park and ride and walking in instead of people maybe walking to and living near the station. So a really big focus over the last 3 years that we've been working on this comprehensive plan has been talking with the community and listening to the needs and wants. And a big theme that came out was about downtown. We began our 3 years ago asking the community, where is downtown Federal Way? And we've got a lot of different answers. Some said 320th Street. I'm like, oh, a street? That's downtown? Okay. Some said, is this a trick question? We don't have a downtown. Some said the PAC, or the Town Square Park, or the Commons. The Commons was a large landowner that, over time was a really focal point to Federal Way community. You can see that things are changing, things are shifting. New demands or new desires or interests in terms of like marketability, like maybe the large strip malls that once were really successful aren't as desirable as they once were. People are maybe wanting more places they can walk to and from instead of driving and parking. Federal Way has a lot of parking in terms of around our commercial hard to get to and from, especially with that light rail station. But one big focus was, okay, we hear that there's not really a well-defined downtown and that there's a desire for one. Federal Way, there's a theme of wanting to be recognizable and promoting a sense of belonging. This is a really diverse community, and we took all this input and used it in forming the vision statement and setting the goals and policies, which will inform budgetary decisions and policy for future decisions as it relates to the whole city. But I think particularly when you come to downtown, and I know that relates or is important to you all because you're part of the downtown or you're part of our city center. And one of our major focus areas was planning around the light rail station, and this included some city-owned property. Raise of hands of those who have heard of the Town Center 3 or TC3. Okay, a couple. So the city owns about not anymore. The city owned about 7.8 acres north of the Town Square Park, next to the Performing Art Event Center. And over the last couple of years, we've partnered with issuing some RFPs and gotten some proposals and ended up entering into a development agreement with a developer to redevelop that property with the goal to help stimulate redevelopment in our downtown, to help establish it, to give it to go and a place for people to live. Because like I mentioned, we are planning for 11,000 housing units over the next 20 years. And part of planning for those units is thinking about where they should go, and around light rail stations is a primary candidate, a really appropriate place. There's another, and this is related, but there's another area of the city that we're doing very similar planning that we're doing for downtown, and it's south of 348th Street. A raise of hands who've heard of the Tacoma Dome Link extension. So you know how you know how the Sound Transit is establishing the light rail station here on 320th? That's for the downtown Federal Way station. There's another station planned in Federal Way, but that's planned for 2035. So as we are seeing around 320th now, the light rail station is just maybe 2 years away from opening, but there's not a lot of development and a lot of people already living or here, or redevelopment occurring. We're hoping to get kind of ahead of the ball in that area of the city and change some of the zoning to allow for uses that are more compatible for light rail. This is a really big theme, this transit-oriented development in the city for both downtown and it's the South Station sub-area plan. I'm gonna jump on to Google really quick, if I can. A share of hands of who's heard of Engage Federal Way? Okay, Engage Federal Way is a public participation platform that the city published to help inform the community about the projects that we're working on and as it relates to the comprehensive plan. So I have these handouts here that you can come and grab, and it has information on how to stay engaged or how to stay informed on what the city is working on for the comprehensive plan and our timeline and adoption. But on this website, you can learn more about what we're working on. The South Station sub-area plan is that area south of 348 that we're planning for the future light rail station. Downtown planning, let's visit that page. That seems pretty relevant to your location. So here's our downtown Federal Way. Here's the parcel I was talking about earlier. That's the Performing Art and Event Center. And this is the property that we ended up selling to One Trent for that redevelopment plan that includes housing, residential and commercial uses, as well as another plaza. And here are some images of what that may look like, or more outdoor spaces and community spaces, community gathering spaces, as well as active ground floor retail. Increased walkability. This plan for the TC3 property will include both residential for ownership and for rent. So there'll be townhomes to buy, and apartments above for rent. And connectivity. Okay, this is a big one. So who here has walked across 320th Street? How was that experience? Okay, probably could be better, maybe. So something that the city is working on, acknowledging that the influence that the light rail station might have on, or will have on how the city operates in terms of like traffic and mobility. Getting across 320th is a barrier to connecting your property to the light rail station and any areas, or in the commons south of 320th. So this here is an image, of a conceptual image of the dip, which is basically the concept of a maybe pedestrian-only overpass that doesn't include stairs. It would need to be ADA so that mothers pushing their strollers or those in a wheelchair or with mobility disabilities could access and cross easily, and kind of separating it from the traffic and the cars of 320th. This is something the city is currently is working on a feasibility study for, and is included in the comprehensive plan in terms of, it's supported in the comprehensive plan in terms of goals and policies that promote walkability for the pedestrians and bicyclists. And that's a project that, like I said, is in the feasibility stage right now. Any questions? Oh wait, we want to do the Q&A later. Okay, I can, just as we're on downtown, I wouldn't mind answering downtown specific questions. Okay, I guess you can initiate conversations, if that's the east, of the hotels. I'm not sure they've specifically engaged with the city. Of course, everyone is welcome to engage, and there are not any, like, I guess the Marlone Geyer's conversation with the city and the comprehensive plan has been ongoing, but I feel like we just kind of initiated conversations over the last maybe 3-6 months. Or is there something specific that you were curious about as it relates to the 3 properties next to each other?
Mostly I'm just thinking about when you're talking about housing potential, you know, whether the hotel next door would be viewed primarily as just an essential service for the community as a hotel, or whether it will eventually be redeveloped for other forms of housing.
That's a good question, and that comes down to the wishes and desires of the property owner and the development community. I think that what the city does is they set the framework through the comprehensive plan. They have a land use map, which has these land use designations. And simplified, the land use designations are housing, mixed use, and centers, and commercial. And those more or less inform the zoning, which set the allowed uses, whether you can have a concrete batch plant here or there, or whether you can have a single-family neighborhood here or there, and where it makes sense. This area right here, this land and the commons land, those all have the same designation as a mixed-use center and have all the same zoning as city center core. So all of the same rules apply. And have all the same allowed uses. So housing is an allowed use, hotels are an allowed use. It comes down to, I think, the intentions and goals of the property owners. But these 3 properties would be treated pretty similarly, with the exception of maybe the commons. Over the last year, maybe 2 years now, the city adopted a view preservation ordinance. It's an overlay which has a boundary that basically the purpose was to preserve the view of Mount Rainier from the Performing Arts and Events Center, so not allowing certain buildings to be built too high to impede that view of Mount Rainier. So that has an additional limitation that applies to those parcels that are within that view shed. But otherwise, the same rules are applying to all these parcels. Sure.
You talked about developing down around 348th. Last Friday, we went to Costco, came off I-5. It took us 4 lights at 348th and Enchanted Parkway to get through that intersection. Somebody needs to plan another route in there.
Yeah. Federal Way is a some call it a very strategically located city, right? You're along I-5, but it also provides a great opportunity if there's a lot of traffic on I-5 to hop off and go down Pack Highway or go down another route. So it's well connected, which has these kind of externalities of the increased traffic. But part of the comprehensive plan is taking, and I won't speak in too much detail about this because I'm not involved in this portion, but the transportation chapter what we do is we take that 11,000 housing units and those 20,000 jobs and we spread them out along these traffic area zones, these TAZs, and then we create this very complicated transportation model. And it is used to identify what lights or intersections are failing or will fail as a result of new development, and then identifies what new projects would need to be implemented to mitigate those impacts from new development. There are a number of big infrastructure improvements planned in this area around south of 348th. There's a project called the Triangle Project. It's a new slip lane and roundabout off of I-5 south of maybe around 356th. That's a project that has funding for the design, but no funding for the actual development. It'll cost a lot of money. So that's a piece where, coordination for the comprehensive planning for the city, coordination across the community, but also with our larger partners, our other jurisdictions, WashDOT in particular, is included as part of the planning, but I can't speak too much more about the details of the model itself, but that is something that is included. But I think this is a topic that was briefed at Planning Commission last week, the transportation chapter, and it is just a reality. There's a lot of single occupants vehicles driving our roads, and I think part of the vision of the city is to create more compact communities that hopefully will provide an alternative to driving Obviously, I don't think anyone wants to walk to Costco and walk home with their Costco purchases. That seems like a vehicle kind of trip, but it is absolutely something that is studied or at least acknowledged and included in the preparation of the transportation chapter.
When you were speaking about having businesses on the lower level and housing on the upper level like you have across the street from Safeway, are you going to be better at figuring out parking? Because we all know what happened when that development opened up. People were not able to park where they lived, so they parked across the street in Safeway until they were told they could no longer do that or park on the streets. Mm-hmm. So you've made businesses there, but those businesses, and I know of somebody personally who tried to open up a business there, but realized that she was not going to have adequate parking because of the fact that you have two people the owner of the business is trying to get his clientele or his customers there, and you have the people who live there that also need parking. Mm-hmm. And that became a big mess. So is that going to be taken into consideration? And I think it should be really at the forefront. Nobody's going to throw away their car tomorrow. That's not going to happen.
You're right. I agree. I think there's like catch-22. It's really hard, especially in a community that doesn't have a lot of new development parking, especially in like multi-story building where the parking needs to be underground or structured parking. It's really expensive per stall. So there's a kind of a give and take in terms of whether you want to, like what your goals and your values are in terms of meeting the need for housing or, supporting new development that has that ground floor retail and balancing with, the existing kind of patterns and behavior of the community in terms of dependence on a car. How it works is that when a proposal comes in, each residential unit will have a minimum parking requirement. Generally, I think on the number of bedrooms, and then the number of parking spaces required for the retail or the ground floor non-residential uses have a required parking spaces for the square footage. That's how we calculate the required parking. The residents shouldn't be parking in the or the business parking spaces, but that's more of the property management enforcement than the city. The city really is just checking that the required minimum parking will be satisfied as part of the proposal. But it's a kind of a balancing act because as we are really wanting to transform some of these asphalt pads and sea of parking in our downtown, we're trying to remove barriers and the financial impact to developers to want to do it. There's not a lot of development occurring here, so we're trying to kind of strike a balance in terms of encouraging and incentivizing development without negatively impacting the community. And I think parking is something that we've considered in terms of reducing the number of required parking, and I don't think it's something that has been implemented, but it's a hot topic because if I were to be having the same conversation with the development community, it would be like, this is what kills projects. Requiring so many parking spaces is just too expensive. To put a parking stall in a garage and then put a building on top and then have ground floor retail around it, it's $80,000 a stall. It just becomes too cost prohibitive for the development. So it's tough, absolutely. I think, it's a balancing act.
Thanks, Denise. And then, So I have a question on this, the downtown. I have limited access to computers. Is 312, is that part of the downtown core? And the reason I'm asking is I'm asking about Steel Lake Park. That has been under fire a couple of times of the rumor of 312th being widened and it will take out Steel Lake Park's parking lot. And yes, it has come up twice. So how does 312th, how does that Steel Lake area, I know they're building the maintenance facility up there, which is good, up above. But what's going on with that area?
So the Street 312 to the south is zoned city center frame, which is another zone. It's city center. Then the north of 312 is single family zoning. So it's neither of those areas, north or south of 312, is in the downtown. The downtown has a boundary. We adopted that earlier this year, or last year. It basically follows, includes a Hillside Plaza. There's not actually a street between Hillside Plaza and the apartments behind it, but that's the boundary north. And then it goes south down 23rd, includes the new light rail station and includes the Commons, and then goes up Pack Highway and east on 320th, and then up PVR. So that's the boundary for downtown. So Steel Lake is not in the downtown, but planning for, I mean, these topics are converging. We've got planning for our parks, we got planning for our facilities, and we got planning for our roads all coming together. So that is, I'm not completely certain on what the plans are for 312. That would be a good question for a traffic engineer at the city, and I can provide you with his contact information. But I believe that the Parks Department is also working on a master plan for Steel Lake to redesign it and to, I think, reconfigure the parking, because there is, I think, often insufficient parking. So that's something that I don't believe that master plan is going to be in the comprehensive plan, but is actually, I think, in work right now. And I can also provide you with the contact information for the parks, or for the who's working on that master plan for the park. But that's not something I'm directly involved in.
I was wondering, in the downtown area, however you define it, can you hear, is low-income housing addressed, and if so, how, and what are the thresholds for low income?
Great, okay, yes, affordable housing. So I'm going to do a little background information. Affordable housing means housing that you can afford without spending more than 30% of your income on housing. If you're spending more than 30% of your income on housing, you're spending too much and you're cost burdened. And the city uses a county-wide metric for setting kind of these income brackets of what low income is, what very low income is, what extremely low income is, and that's the area median income. And I don't know if I'm using too much jargon, but basically we have these income bands that set what affordable housing is for low income. And what the city does is, as part of every new multifamily development, we require that the developer set aside 4% of the units and record a covenant with the county that require those 4% of the units to maintain affordability and serve households with very low incomes. So that's at 50% AMI, which is half of the area median income. So the city, in one approach, is requiring any new development to have a small portion of it be affordable for very low income households. Other actors, other partners, not at the requirement of the city, are providing affordable housing in the city. There are developers, there are low income housing tax credits that developers seek and utilize to build affordable housing. There are state requirements in terms of Sound Transit's surplus property that will include a portion of affordable housing. And that's at a higher income bracket, that's at 80% AMI, which is which would cost more than what the city requires at the 4%. But absolutely, like all around the city, when we're talking about those 11,000 housing units, we actually have those disaggregated by income band. We need to be planning for a lot of housing that is above market rate and a lot of housing below market rate. The community, Federal Way is unique in this case. A lot of the housing that was built in the city, most of it was built in the 70s and 80s. So there's a lot of housing currently right now that is affordable to these middle income households because of the age of the unit, the amenities, the size, the location. But there is not a lot of housing that is affordable to very low income households. And there's also not a lot of housing being developed that's meeting the what people can afford above 100% AMI, so the more expensive housing. So we have this interesting kind of dichotomy of both needing housing units that are, I don't want to say luxurious, but not income restricted, not subsidized. We just need more housing all around, and we need housing that is serving our low income populations. Does that answer your question? Okay.
study the documents or study your comments more, but I mean, the percentages that you expressed and the different developers, I guess the one thing maybe more specifically, you could address the percentages or maybe just go a little slower
Okay.
on
Sorry.
the percentages. And also, and I think you said sound transit surplus property. I don't know, around the transit center, we have a lot of TOD sites, which I guess maybe that's what you're referring to, or maybe you could elaborate, because
Sure.
that's just kind of kitty corner across the street.
Yes, okay, let me start over. Okay, so we'll start with sound transit surplus property. There is a state law that was passed that requires the extra property that sound transit has, when it be surplused, it be available for housing development, that 80% of it be affordable, or be surplus for residential, and 80% of that residential housing be affordable to 80% AMI. So that's the 80-80-80 rule, which basically requires a majority of the residential housing that's developed on sound transit's property to be affordable at 80% AMI, which is low income. So AMI is the area median income. It's like the metric that we use to set, like, for a certain family size, like what their annual income would be and where they would land on this kind of the spectrum. So used to define affordability. So yeah, understanding like the likelihood of the redevelopment of sound transit's property is taken into consideration in terms of planning for housing throughout the city, but also changing and making it easier for development to occur and for certain types of development to occur that may be naturally more affordable is also an approach the city is taking to address meeting the need for housing at different incomes. So, mm-hmm.
Are those like surplus property? Are they defined as you're defining surplus property?
Yes. So between 21st Ave and 23rd, here, let me pull up a map. Let's see.
Can you repeat what's being asked? Thank you.
Yes. The question is around sound transit surplus properties. Like if they will be used for affordable housing and where those surplus properties are. So I'm just going to go to Federal Way or to Sound Transit's website, if I can. Hopefully this will pull up a map. Sorry, this is not a website I manage, so I actually was hoping to pull up the TOD website. Oh, thank you. TOD means transit-oriented development. Here we go. Wow. That was deep in there. Okay, here we go. So here's downtown Federal Way. Here we are right here, Calvary Lutheran Church. And then so just north of 320th where the light rail station is. These purple bound, these properties with the purple perimeter are new parcels that Sound Transit will be creating with the surplus property. They bought all this land when they developed the site for staging to put their materials down, and so they own it now, and they're going to end up selling them. And they will be redeveloped, and as a stipulation or requirement of that redevelopment, these parcels, 80% of these parcels should be available for housing, and 80% of those housing units should be affordable for households that are at 80% AMI. So this is 21st Avenue South, and this is 23rd, and this is 320th, so just across the Commons.
I have a question. the park and ride lot that's south of the property here, the west 5 acres of that was sold from the church. That used to belong to the church. There's only about a dozen cars that park there now. Is there other plans for that facility now? Is there anything in the future for that park and ride lot?
Potentially, not in the city's plans. I think it's the King County, King County Metro owns that property. So the city doesn't own it. I'm not aware of any permit applications being submitted for redevelopment or changes to that property. But similar to this property and the Commons and Sound Transit property has the same zoning and the same designation. So all the same rules would apply. But I know that using the transit station, like ever since COVID, it's not back to pre-COVID levels. So maybe at one point there was a lot of cars parked there and people walking to the transit station. I don't believe that's that demand for taking transit has returned since the pandemic.
On that map there, I thought there was supposed to be an additional parking for the ride station there. Is it there? I can't see it from here, but so where is that garage going to be?
Yes, it actually was an expansion of the existing garage. So that's been built. They're finalizing some permit requirements, and that should get the certificate of occupancy within the next 6 months and be operating. So I believe they added like 1,000, maybe 500, I don't remember exactly. They added quite a few number of stalls to the existing parking garage, and they just pushed it out west towards the Town Square Park.
I'm going to recommend that we continue with the presentation. We will have a time for Q&A after. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. Is that the end of the presentation?
Well, is there? Yeah, I'm about done, I think, actually. Okay.
All right. Thanks to our commitment to folks that we'd be about an hour. We are at about an hour. But if you had a burning question, she's here. The maps are here. And you're certainly invited to stay. Like to give a big thanks, please, to the folks who did the food. And Denise, you had something you were going to, oh, okay. Then please, how many people have ever been to Holden Village? All right, some of us. We're going to try and do a Holden Village cleanup of the tables so that we don't have a lot of folks going into the kitchen while the dishwashers are trying to run the dishwasher and get clean plates done. So the way you do it is you consolidate everything. Would you please scrape any slightly used food onto a plate and then stack everything else up? And we will come around and pick up with a cart. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.